thank you for joining. Ini sudah mulai apa langsung? Udah. I'm Daniel. I'm the academic director of Cinta Bahasa, and I am actually from Jogja. Have you guys know about Jogja?
It's in Jawa.
It's in Jawa. Good. But you haven't been there.
No.
Alright.
Sudah.
Yeah.
Bagus. It's nice.
Thank you for that. I was born there but raised in West Java. But then for my high school and university, I returned to Jogja. Please come and join us. And I would like to thank you all for joining me today here, and also Hubud for this opportunity. And please come in. So Mario and Marin from Germany, and may I know Alina, and you are from Ukraine. And
Peter from Germany.
Peter from Germany.
Yes, I learned a bit Bahasa.
A little bit Bahasa.
So I just drop in here for a few minutes and have a look if it's on which level you start.
All right.
It's more of a cultural discussion. It's not just a language class.
So and then also the trick how to actually learn and explaining why Indonesian have this, but other culture doesn't have, right? And you are?
I'm Kyle from Scotland.
Kyle from Scotland.
And Chris from California.
From California. All right. Okay. So we all know that today is Indonesian. We celebrate our independence. It's our 72 years independent from the Dutch. The interesting part of being an independent country, our independence was not, how would I put this? So, okay, let me check my cue cards. I have all the good words here. So, at that time, you might have heard the name Sukarno proclaimed our independence at the right moment, the absence of power, because just after I think America bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we were under Japan at the time, right? So there's an absence of power, and then we proclaim our independence. But Indonesia was never existed before. Indonesia is a new concept. From the tip of Sumatra, Aceh, to the end of Papua, we are, a lot of ethnicities, a lot of cultures there, a lot of cultures that have been existed since the early times. The earliest record in history was from 6th or 7th century, but never before we were formed, or we acknowledge that we are Indonesians. The term Indonesia itself was introduced by James Richardson Logan and in 1850. So Indonesian is used to describe the islands of India, the archipelago east of India. Right. So when we are talking about learning Indonesian language, the language itself is a second language to all of the people in Indonesia. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. It is a reconstructed language that we take from Melayu language, right? The Melayu language was already the lingua franca of the archipelago. It was the language of a Melayu kingdom that was in 670, around 670 CE, was in one part of Sumatra, in Jambi, and scientists have conclusion that this Melayu kingdom have its port in Jambi, but the capital was in what is now Padang, West Sumatra. The Melayu kingdom speaks Bahasa Melayu, and most of them are just common people, peasants, fishermen, ordinary people. And this Melayu kingdom is under the Sriwijaya Empire at that time. Sriwijaya Empire is centered in South Sumatra now, in Palembang. And Sriwijaya Empire was a very strong empire with strong ships. They have a very strong navy that they conquer all the trading ports in Malacca, and they help the language, the Melayu language, spread around all over the archipelago, because they bring the workers from the Melayu kingdom, right? So this language, Melayu language, has been the lingua franca for the whole archipelago, the trading language, which later in 1928, around 17 years before the independence of Indonesia, we decided to take that as our national language. Prior to 1928, all of the struggle to gain independence was all with weapon, but was done in very locally, regionally. So Aceh will fight for their own, Javanese will fight for their own, Maluku will fight for their own. That's why the Dutch easily defeat us, because it's sporadic, spread but never integrated. And the young people at that time figured out that what we need is the sense of belonging. If we feel we belong to something similar, something same, we will be able to join the fight hand in hand. So in 28th of October in 1928, they made this youth pledge, pledging that they have one land, the whole archipelago, and then one nation, Indonesia, as their own nationality, aside of their ethnicity, and one language, Bahasa Indonesia. The terms that was introduced by in 1850s. From there was several discussion about which language will be used as Bahasa Indonesia. At that time, most of the people who gathered and make that pledge was from Java, so they wanted to make Javanese language as the national language. The thing is, Javanese language have levels of politeness. There's a level that you use to speak with your peers, but to your parents you will have to use another level, which means another set of vocabulary, a different set of grammar. So it's like having three different language to speak. And that also that was rejected because of the difficulty first, and then the second, it doesn't really represent democracy. It doesn't really represent that everyone is equal, because there are levels, right? So they decided to, well, several other languages was dropped as well, because like the language of Bugis, for example, was only spoken by a smaller number than the Javanese. But then they come up with this Melayu language, which is already the lingua franca, the language they were using in that congress as well. So why not? And then they take that language as the basic, and then they started to make the rules, make the grammar. Because prior to 1928, there was no book about that language. It's a living language, but never recorded before. So they started to compile the vocabulary. They started to make the okay, so how to string the sentences and everything, which is mainly done by a person called, his name is Sultan Takdir Ali Syahbana, a very prominent figure in Indonesian language, and he is from Padang. So it is his native language actually. So we always believe that people from Padang have the strongest or the closest to Indonesian language as its native language. Alright, so we reconstruct all the rules, and even until now we still try to, make new rules, create new word and everything, which makes Indonesian language more how do I put it, it follows more rules than it has exceptions, because the rules were made by the people nowadays. It's not just accepted, oh, we have to say this because it was said before. No, but because we create the rule, we create the grammar, so the grammar is more logical. Alright, any question on this before I move on to
Who was the government in power in 1928 that wanted to create the youth cohesion?
1928? It was still the Dutch.
Oh, but I thought you said it was driven by the
Indonesian.
Indonesian.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And
So
what was the youth movement, sort of what banner were they under politically that wanted to kind of create that cohesion?
So they were, alright, so Indonesia always claimed that the Dutch occupy Indonesia for 350 years, but it's not quite correct. Only starting from 800 the Dutch come in. Since 650 it was the East Indies Company, a private company, not the government of the Dutch. And because the company only take from Indonesia, the government feel that they need to give something back to the Indonesians. So they established schools, they sent Indonesian prominent Indonesian privileged people from the families of the previous kings and from the royal families, rich people. They send them to the Netherlands to study in the universities, and also they established Stovia. It's a school in Jakarta now. Stovia is a school for medical doctors, but only for locals. They call it for pribumi, only for Indonesian. And these students when they now studying in university, they started to learn about how to actually think, how to critically think, and then they started to make this movement. It was started in 1908, 20 years before the second Congress, 1928. 1908, a group of students from this university, which is now Universitas Indonesia, created what they call Budi Utomo. Budi Utomo is a cultural organization that helps other people, other students, to learn about, to have like culture, activities, charity, and everything. A social organization. But this is the first organization ever in Indonesia, and then the members started to use this group, this network, to bring the politics into it. In 1913, they established the Indonesian Party, Partai Indonesia. It's a political group. Sorry, not party, but it's perhimpunan. So it's a union. It's they have political issues, political agendas, and they already use, like, they have a press bureau. So they create publication and send it to all over the world to get support for being acknowledged as a country under occupation of the Dutch. And this, they were underground, but also try to be public at the same time. So the government was the Dutch government at that times always against them, and at several occasions captured them and sent them into exile. That answer your question? Yeah. Alright. So what we know is that Indonesia has different ethnicities, different first languages, but then we decided to have this one common language, one national language. So when you learn Indonesian, you will find that the way people in Jogja, in Java, speak Indonesian, and the way Balinese people speak Indonesian, the way people in Papua speak Indonesians, will not be the same. There will be a slight difference, influenced by their first languages. I think it's like in the Great Britain, the Scot all speak English, but actually people from Scotland, from Wales, they also speak different languages aside of English. Yeah. Alright. Let me where that gets me.
Sorry, how's it in schools, for example, in Java? Is it entirely in Bahasa Indonesia, or do they teach in Java language also in Java schools?
A very good question. So, Indonesian language has been the formal and official language in Indonesia since 1945. So it always becomes the instruction language in school as well. So they teach Indonesian language, and I think but the local language was not taught in school at that time. It was around the 80s that the local language started to be taught. Yeah, so when I was in school, I live in Cirebon. Cirebon is a small city in West Java, So I learned 2 other languages than just Indonesian. I also learned Bahasa Cirebon dan Bahasa Sunda, because West Java was all speak Sundanese, but in Cirebon they also have different language. So yeah, we've been learning a lot of languages since we were kid, like multilingual. Okay, so anyone here, you already speak Indonesian?
No, I know. I mean, sedikit.
Sedikit. Fine. How many of you have learned Indonesian?
So far.
Good job.
Alright, sedikit, yeah. How many of you are considering to learn Indonesian? Good. When you want to learn, when you decided you want to learn Indonesian, what was the main reason, actually?
To communicate with people.
To communicate with people. Very good. We have, the language is indeed a very important means to communication, but we also know that we can do communication with other mean, not only with the language, right? We have, gestures, we have expressions that also with the language will be a very good way of communication. Okay. What do you think, or what do you expect the challenges of learning Indonesian?
I think the main challenge is that there are no common vocabulary. I mean, when I learn a European language, there's so many words in common or overlapping with my language. So it's always easier to step in the new European language. But the biggest challenge for me learning Bahasa Indonesia, that all words are totally different, basically. So this is quite different. I can just read a Spanish newspaper or an Italian newspaper, even without learning a lot Spanish or Italian, because a lot of words common. But the Bahasa, a newspaper always is a tough time.
And what about you? What do you think the challenges would be?
Well, I mean,
Or
I don't know.
that you
I have a cerebral capacity, so so I mean, I speak, I've been able to speak German, Japanese, English. I've studied other languages. I mean, I'm just, how much more can I take, right? So, but I actually don't find it a very complicated language. I find it actually quite easy, and structurally it's quite easy. There's no verb tense, it's implied, but it's just a matter of disciplining, myself to be able to do it. But it's an interesting comment though, because I've heard from quite a few Europeans, particularly Dutch people, that they find the language quite easy to learn. But I don't know, that's maybe not. I thought there was a significant amount of kind of Dutch influence into the language.
Oh, yes, of course. We've been under Dutch like for 350 years.
Yeah.
So we have, there's a book called, I think, 9 out of 10 Indonesian words are loan words, which is not correct, because I think all of Indonesian words are, from foreign language, because Bahasa Indonesia is new language, right? A new name that we call Melayu language. So most of them are from Melayu. But yes, we have a lot of influence from Bahasa Melayu, have a lot of influence from Sanskrit. And you can find almost all vocabulary relating to the the culture, the religion, like upacara, all with the body soul experience are from Sanskrit. Yeah. And then we have a lot of words from the Dutch, and you can find that all related to administration, related to medical, the technology that they bring to Indonesia at that time, a new thing for us, so we take the words directly from them. Apotek, kantor, organisasi, that's all from the Dutch, right? And we also have a lot of influence from China. Chinese language, if you look up later, Sriwijaya was heavily influenced with China. It has very strong relationship with China, so a lot of Chinese. Even if you go to Palembang, the local people there just look like Chinese, but they will never acknowledge that. They would always deny that they are Chinese. Being Chinese is difficult in Indonesia. I'm Chinese, by the way. That's why I know. Although I know that I'm Chinese late when I was like 15 or 17, so I didn't really know earlier. Anyway, we have a lot of words from China, and mostly we used in trading and food, because a lot of like bak mi, bak pao, that's all from China, Chinese vocabulary. We also have from Portuguese. From Portuguese we have gereja, meja, jendela, all related to the church, and architecture are from the Portuguese. Even the royal palace in Java, in Jogja, the Sultan's palace was built by a Portuguese architect that was designed in such a way to prevent the Dutch from coming in, and they have very low doors, for example. So if a Dutch comes in, they have to bow, because they always refuse to bow to the Sultan. So they made the door very low, so they have to bow to enter the palace. Aside of that, we also have influence from the Arabic language. Islam or Arabs, Islam mainly comes to Indonesia in two waves, I think, around 800s and then around 1500s comes to Indonesia in two waves, and they all influence our vocabulary. Like Senin is actually from Arab word Isnin, means the second day, and etc. So we have a lot of influence from foreign languages, but also from the different languages inside Indonesia. Now we have download. We have the word unduh for download. We have the word unggah also for uploading. That's actually from Javanese language, because the concept was similar, so we use that instead. We have several words from that is native to Papua, to the people in Maluku, that we take as our Indonesian language. So it is not only a salad bowl, but it's a mix of like totally everything. You take out everything in your fridge, put it in a bowl, and then you eat it. That's Indonesian language. Yeah, a lot of everything. Alright, so the main thing that a lot of my students find it difficult in learning Indonesian is that it is really different from the way the European language works, right? This is mainly because we let's go back to when we were still babies. I hope you all still remember that. When we were babies, we already have this basic logic to you know, that we will use that as the way to react to the world, right? But at that time we don't have the language to verbalize it, so we react to the situation, right? Our parents will come to us when we cry. So if we want our parents to come too close to us, then we cry. Every time we cry, they come. Every time we are hungry, we cry, they come. And then they always use these words, but to us when we were babies, it just sounds, right? We register the first sound, the second sound, the third sound, and then we realize that some of the sounds that we register were repeated in similar situation. Oh, you're hungry. Oh, yeah. So hungry is repeated in that situation, and then we register that as a word. And then when we started to be able to speak, we start to speak, you know, one-word sentences, two-word sentences, three-word sentences with mistakes in the grammar, right? And then the parents correct us, and then we have the language of which we are using now to think. So every time we think, every time we use our logic, we always use the first language that is our mother's or our parents' language, not necessarily English. Everyone who speaks the same language will have different way of thinking, different way of verbalizing their thoughts, because the first language that they learn is their mother's or their parents' language, not necessarily their native language. And then when we grow up, we started to have more complex sentences, complex thoughts. So we have more layers, and now we have a very, very complex way of thinking. So when we want to start to learn a new language, it is always difficult for us if we think in our current stage of mind. If we think the way we think today, it will be very difficult, because this is already complex, and you cannot just, you know, cross over to speak at the complex level in the other language. You have to be able to go down to simplify your thoughts. That's not easy. I know that's not easy. But in order to be able to to be able to think in the second language, in Indonesian or in Japanese or in everything, yeah, you have to, like, it will be better if you just let go of your first language. But at least if you don't want to let go, you need to simplify your thoughts first. Because we know that Indonesian language logic and other language logic are totally different. If I have a red book at the moment, an English speaking person will say that's a red book. They will describe it first, and then they mention the object, a red book. But in Indonesia, we think in different way. It's buku merah, so the object first and then the color and then the description. That alone shows that it has a very big difference. So in order to be able to speak in Indonesian, you are not only required to know the difference, not only to understand, but also to accept. And that's mostly the difficult part of learning other language, is accepting that it is different. Well, it is hard accepting differences, right? Even when you come to Indonesia, to Bali, you enjoy the difference of the view, but you still want some other things to stay the same. Like, I want to have a good internet connection, I have to have a villa with a nice bed. You still want things not that much difference for you to be comfortable with. And in learning languages, that also often happened. You want to accept the differences, but then something, I mean, your basic logic will just kick in, and but that's not the way I used to. For example, when the first time Indonesians meet each other, they will introduce themselves, saya Daniel, saya dari Jogja, and then that's it. We never say things like, it's nice to meet you. No, we never say that. Why? Because there is something that we culturally show them, whether or not it is nice to meet them. Would you like to demonstrate something with me? Help me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So if I meet someone, some Indonesian, and I really think it's nice to meet them, the first thing I do after this, after shaking hands, putting my hand on my chest. This is actually saying that it comes from the heart. That's already the sign of it's nice to meet you. And then if I really think it is nice to meet you, I will keep on talking, keep on asking you questions. If I, after say Daniel, and then I just leave, then you will know that I don't find it nice to meet you. Or maybe I have something more important than thank you very much. Yeah, that's all. So that's one of the things we don't really need to say, because sometimes you say, when you say it's nice to meet you to every person you met, over time it becomes less meaningful. It's not actually nice to meet someone, but you just say it as, that's how you say it, that's how you do it. So in Indonesia, we don't have that culture of having to say everything. Since I was born to this day, my parents never say that they love me, but I know exactly that they love me, with their action, with their physical embrace and everything. But it's never like, I love you, I'm proud of you. No, we're not into words so much. So we never say it's nice to meet you in Indonesian. But a lot of English speaking person find it not quite when you don't say that. It's like something missing. I have to say something after this. So some Indonesian will, okay, if you want to say that, you can say senang bertemu dengan Anda atau dengan Bapak. I'm happy to meet you. Senang bertemu Bapak. But that's just a translation. That's not our culture. Yeah. So when an Indonesian introduce themselves to you and say nothing after that, please don't be offended. Please don't be offended, because that's not in our culture. And knowing these differences sometimes, makes us offended, makes you feel offended, because I don't say something back. We don't say please as much as you say. I can come to a store. If I go to like Indomaret or Circle K, I just come in and ask them what I want to buy, because from the context it is already clear that they are attending the shop, means they sell the things inside the shop. I come in means I want to buy something, so I don't have to say that saya mau beli satu kopi. No. We don't have to say that. We just say what we want to buy. One of that, please. Even without please, because it's already in the context, right? If you want to order a coffee in restaurant, in warung, we would just say bisa minta kopi. That's all. No need please. No. But we do say thank you. Yeah. Terima kasih. It is always appreciated and never too much. You cannot say too much of thank you, but you can say too much of please. We don't really say please that much. All right. Any question on this?
Yes. Do the people understand if you have no time? When I walk on the road, then many people come. How are you? Where are you going? And it's just not possible if you have an appointment. Then you can't answer these questions.
Yes.
So I sometimes say only I go home, or
Yes.
something stupid just to get rid of them.
To get rid of them. Yeah. We live in a very tight community. We used to live in a very tight community that everyone in that community knows everything about every other one. Whatever you did at home, so if you live in a compound, whatever you did before you leave your room and walk to the end of the compound, by the time you reach the other end, everyone already knows what you did there, right? You break something, everyone else just know before you reach the other end. That's actually how Indonesian communities work, because the community in Indonesia is more like family. They literally help each other in every situation, like in every aspects of life. You want to get married, the whole community will be like, work on your wedding. Every time we have cremation here, not only the Banjar, sometimes even the neighboring Banjar will help, right? And by that, it is a little bit rude to us if you meet someone living in the same area or that you meet frequently. It will be a little rude if we don't ask you questions. We have to ask you questions. Yeah. It's like if I met you and then I didn't even ask you where you're going, I will be burdened with guilt, like very guilty, because I'm afraid that he will be mad at me and he will be offended because I didn't ask him question. So we have to ask the question to which you don't have to answer, right? You don't have to answer honestly. You just say, oh yeah, whatever the question is, just prepare a list of a vocabulary that mau kemana? Oh, ke sana. Dari mana? Dari rumah. Sama siapa? Sendiri. Yeah, just it's like that. You don't really need to answer them like truthfully. That's unless they offer you taxi, when you you want them to know where you're going, right? You don't want them to take you anywhere. And the community itself also, because we are very fine.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Oh yes, please.
You said you feel offended, you feel guilty when you don't ask other people
Yeah.
a question. But do you feel offended when we don't ask you a question?
We are not. No. We don't feel offended if you don't ask a question. Is that a feeling of offended or not? Yeah. What I will feel if we meet and you didn't ask me question is like, maybe she doesn't like me. Maybe I'm not that important to her. That oh yeah, that happens. If someone in this room got married and I don't get the invitation, I would be like, why I didn't get the invitation? I thought we already talked, we already discussed about things, about life, but why? I mean, in the Western countries, you will only invite, the closest relatives, the closest friends you have, and those who don't get invited will understand that, there's several reasons. But in Indonesia, no. That's why when my older sister got married, she sent out 400 invitation, but the number of people who come to that reception was more than 1,000.
It's hard to plan.
It's hard to plan. So if you have this, it's very hard to plan and very costly. And that was already cut out several people that they don't really want to come to be there. But families, no, you cannot not inviting them. All right. And we live in this very close community that knows everything about everyone, that gives us because we already know all the information about everyone. We don't really need to say full sentences anymore. We always now we speak in just one word, 1 to 3 words sentences, because everything is already in the context. It's like all of us now sharing one folder in the cloud, so every time anyone put any file there, everyone else will know, right? So we don't talk about, we don't have to say that again. For example, if in this room we talk about you got married, and then the next time we meet, the first time I will ask is not how are you, because when we meet I already see you in one piece, looking fine, so nothing happened. But then I will ask, how was the honeymoon? Directly, sometimes even without good morning or good afternoon. It's just like, hey, how's your honeymoon? It sounds nosy. It feels like we weren't really, like very nosy, but that's how we ask, how are you? Because everything else we already know. You're looking fine, so if I ask apa kabar, baik, that's a very certain answer, right? So because we also want this conversation to start, so we ask the thing that we do not know yet. How was the honeymoon? how was the husband and everything. And yeah, it to Western culture it sounds a bit nosy. I realized that when I was in Vietnam, Indonesian, when they meet people for the first time, if they are not accustomed to Western culture, they usually ask very offensive questions like where are you from, are you married, how old are you. That's what the basic question usually were. I didn't realize that it was offensive at that time to the Western people, but when I was in Vietnam I realized that it is very offensive, because a Vietnamese, it turns out that Vietnamese used to ask not only the age and the marital status, but also how much do you earn every month. It's like, what's your salary? I mean, like, that's none of your business. But then I discovered that it is their way of knowing whether we are, more financed than they are. So they would know if they take us to a place, let's go to this place, and they know that we can afford, buying our meal there. They don't have to pay for you, right? That's actually their intention by asking how much you make. And then my thought was, so there must be an explanation why we ask how old are you, right? There must be an explanation why we are very curious about your marital status. And then it hits me that in our community everything is treated as family. So Indonesian only knows stranger or family. So by asking how old are you, your marital status is our way to put you into our family tree. If you are, because I know how old roughly an Indonesian age. I can guess. Oh, that's he might be 20 something or 30 something. But looking at foreigners, I cannot tell how old are you, right? And I find it, I always get wrong. I thought someone was 40. It turns out they are still 25, and I was very embarrassed for that. So Indonesian asked that because they want to put you into our family tree, because there is no, from stranger is directly to family. There is no between that. So if you are as old as our parents, we will call you Bapak, Ibu. Bapak is the way we address our father. Ibu is our mother. But if you are, just 1-2 years, like my peers, I would maybe call you only by name later on. Or sometimes for respecting you, I will also use Mas or Mbak. Mas for the boys, Mbak is for the female, right? That's to show respect. But that's how we address people in our family. So we are putting you into our family tree. Here's the thing with addressing people. A lot of Indonesian book still use Anda. Anda is used in place of you, because we don't have a general you. If you talk to your parents, Dad, where did you go last night? You can use you there. But in Indonesian, we cannot say that. Pak, Bapak pergi kemana? We say bapak in place of you. But because there are so many you in Indonesian, some of Indonesian teacher will teach you to use anda. But anda is not actually correct. Anda is actually very cold. Yeah. It's like if I'm having a press conference and then these reporters are asking questions, hard questions, and then I will address them as anda. It is still respectful, but distant and cold, that I don't want to actually know who you are. I don't want to, know you, so next time we meet I can say hi. No. Anda is that cold. So please, if you are tempted or tempted to use anda as you, please don't. It's very distant and very cold. If you address me anda, I will be very sad because you don't want to know me more.
Now,
Another question.
Did
Good.
I took a class from Cinta Bahasa,
Mhm.
some lessons, and they were the ones who told us,
Yeah.
like they're the ones. You're with Cinta Bahasa, right?
Yes, I'm with Cinta Bahasa.
So you're a teacher, so we were told by Cinta Bahasa to say anda, to go back, but you're saying that that's not.
That's not correct. Yes. So actually in Cinta Bahasa.
Money back.
Huh?
I'm gonna get my money back.
Oh no. There is no refund policy. Yeah. Alright. Most teachers use anda just to help you to get to understand the you in Indonesia. But I believe later on the teacher explain about the differences, and I think in our when did you learn that with Cinta Bahasa?
Well, when I was at green school, running green school, because Cinta Bahasa was giving lessons too.
Oh yeah.
So.
That
So,
was in 19.
it's like six years ago.
6 years ago.
But then I took a class here just a year ago, and they were also doing anda.
If it is last year, I will have to check with the teacher. I will
now not use one.
no. Yes, anda is a very easy way to avoid more questions from the student, because there are a lot of you, and if on your first lesson you have this many you might be like you don't want to attend the second lesson because there's too much you. What about me and we? That would be a lot more. No, only you we have a lot. But okay. Any other questions for this? Alright. So, apa kabar? We always say baik. Yeah. Because I believe that when even in your language, if you are asked how are you, you always come with good, fine, or something similar like that. You don't really tell that you have a bad day or something unless it is a very good friend, right? Great. Same then. Right. So the first thing that we need to do when we want to learn another language, it's not only Indonesian, is accepting the difference, the logic, and then we also need to understand that Indonesian language is very contextual. The meaning is already in the context, so you don't have to say every word of it. And as much as possible, I will recommend you not to translate your thought into Indonesian, but start thinking Indonesian. Alright, I already got the sign from Kasvi. It is very interesting. Thank you, everyone. I will be happy to answer more questions. You can fire me your questions to my email, daniel@cintabahasa.com. Any questions? I think I have my business card here.
I don't have any questions, but I want to say that I really love the Indonesian culture.
Thank you very much. And yes,
Right on the whiteboard.